Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye again stresses the need for the government to retake control over the nation's history textbooks. It seems the world has a new democracy. After years under military rule, Aung San Suu Kyi's opposition party sweeps to a landslide election victory in Myanmar. Plus, in the latest disturbing report on global warming, scientists say we may already be halfway towards a temperature threshold which would have devastating effects on the Earth. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 10th of November. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this afternoon, President Park Geun-hye has reiterated the importance of reintroducing state history textbooks into the nation's secondary schools. At a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Park said the existing textbooks teach middle and high school students wrong values by making light of North Korean provocations. She added that the current books fail to show the direction the country should take. This, the president said, inevitably leads to the students' loss of pride about their own country. The government plans to issue state history textbooks from 2017 to eliminate what it says are left-leaning contents in the existing books. The main opposition party claims it's an attempt to beautify pro-Japan activities during the colonial era and South Korea's past military dictatorships. And on a related note, the National Institute of Korean History says it has closed its call for writers of the country's new state-authored history textbooks. Now, this comes, of course, amid the ongoing controversy over the hot-button issue. Although not much more than that is known right now, the Institute's director told a local media outlet that more than 25 people applied for the positions. The call was posted on the Institute's website for 6 days and targeted scholars, professors and researchers in 8 fields, including ancient, modern, Eastern and Western history. The recruiting process will be finalised and the team of writers announced next Friday. Now, lawmakers are racing, really, to redraw the country's electoral map by a self-imposed Friday deadline ahead of general elections set for April next year. Members of the Parliamentary Political Return Committee are meeting as we speak in a bid to reach agreement on the number of districts for those elections. The ruling Saenuri party supports raising the number of geographical constituencies and lowering the number of proportional representatives to make room for more rural constituencies without increasing the number of seats in the National Assembly. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is against reducing the number of proportional representatives, claiming it will stoke regionalism in Korean politics. Now, Korea's southern resort island of Jeju is going to get a second airport. The country's transport ministry says the airport is needed to handle an increasing number of visitors to the island. Now, we're going to take a look at the map and we can see where the airport is going to be located. It's going to be located towards the eastern side of the island, and if all goes as planned, it will open by 2025. As it stands now, Jeju is only served by Jeju International Airport. The ministry says this airport is currently under strain with the increase in the number of travellers. More than 23 million people passed through Jeju International Airport last year alone. This figure is forecast to top 32 million by the year 2020. Now, Korea's export prices slumped to a 9-month low in October as the local currency continued to strengthen against the greenback. The Bank of Korea says the export price index dipped to 82.12, down 3.5% from the previous month. On year, the index fell more than 6%. Import prices We're also down 3% on month to 78.42, and that marks the fastest monthly drop since January. The Korean won continues to gain ground against the US dollar. The average $1 exchange rate fell by more than 3% on month in October. Now, Myanmar's first open national election in 25 years is slowly reaching its conclusion, and the opposition National League for Democracy Party is declaring a landslide victory. For opposition party leader Aung San Suu Kyi, this is the result of nearly 4 decades of struggle against the country's military dictatorship. Park Geun-hye has this report.
People in Myanmar are celebrating as the National League of Democracy, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, is claiming an early victory in the country's first openly contested national election in 25 years. The vote counting is slow going, but so far the NLD has won 49 of 54 seats in the lower house, and they are saying they expect to win about 70% of all 498 seats available in the next few days. A quarter of the total is still reserved for the military. The acting chairman of the military-backed Union Solidarity Development Party has already conceded the loss of his seat and says he accepts the result. This is a historic time for the country and Aung San Suu Kyi, who has been trying to bring democracy to Myanmar since the late 80s. Influenced by Mahatma Gandhi and Buddhist principles of non-violence, Suu Kyi helped found the NLD in 1988. But her activities put her under house arrest, where she spent most of the next 21 years. In 91, she led the NLD to an election victory, but it was annulled by the military junta. The next year, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, with the committee chair calling her an astounding example of the power of the powerless. She was released from house arrest in 2010 and has led the NLD since then, steering it to this groundbreaking victory. Although she is still the leader of the party, she is not able to become president, as the constitution does not allow someone with children of foreign nationality to hold the position, and Suu Kyi has 2 British passport-holding sons. So who will take the post? No one seems to know for sure, and one might not be chosen till sometime next year, which could lead to months of uncertainty. But the people of Myanmar don't seem too concerned for the time being. Rather, they're celebrating what they see as the end of over 50 years of military rule that has stifled the country. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Now, Britain's weather agency says the world has warmed 1 degree Celsius since pre-industrial times, and scientists say that means average global temperatures are just 1 degree away from a threshold where the impacts of climate change get a whole lot worse. The figures come as world leaders prepare for a major UN summit on climate change that's going to happen in Paris. Sun Jung-in has more.
The world's climate is about to enter uncharted territory. According to Britain's Met Office, this year is poised to be the first time global average temperatures will surpass the milestone of 1 degree Celsius above pre-industrial levels. It said global temperatures in the January to September period were already 1.02 degrees Celsius above the average temperatures between 1850 and 1900, or prior to industrialization, when humans started burning fossil fuels on a large scale. The 1 degree rise is psychologically important as it puts the Earth halfway towards the 2 degrees Celsius limit that scientists set to avoid the worst effects of global warming, such as floods, droughts, and rising sea levels. Topping off the grim news, the World Meteorological Organization said that 2016 would be the first year in which the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is over 400 parts per million on average. The World Bank warned that without the right policies to combat the impacts of climate change, an additional 100 million people will be driven into extreme poverty by 2030, disrupting agriculture and fueling the spread of malaria and other diseases. The findings were released ahead of a major UN summit on climate change that starts in under 3 weeks in Paris. World leaders will meet in the hope of reaching a new deal on slashing greenhouse gas emissions to combat global warming. 손정인, Arirang News.
Now, with many of the world's economies lowering their corporate tax rates, local businesses here in Korea, whose corporate tax to GDP ratio is one of the highest in the world, are increasingly calling for some tax relief. Shin Se-min reports.
Korea's corporate tax to GDP ratio is one of the highest in the OECD, which for local firms points to a need to lower the burden. According to an OECD report, the figure for Korea stood at 3.4% as of 2013, down 0.3 percentage points from the year before. That puts it in sixth place among the OECD's 32 member nations, in a tie with the Czech Republic and Israel. Norway topped the list with 8.5%, followed by Australia and Luxembourg. Many of the world's leading economies have been lowering their corporate tax rates in a bid to strengthen the competitiveness of local companies. Global accounting firm Deloitte says that 36 of the world's 143 countries have lowered their corporate profit tax rates in the last 5 years. Ireland is planning to introduce a policy that lowers the rate for R&D companies to 6.25%, far lower than the global average of just over 23%. In Japan, the Abe administration has vowed to lower the effective corporate tax rate to the 20% range from the current rate of just over 35%. And in the U.S., companies that bring their overseas production facilities back home already qualify for lower rates. Given the global trend, the demand for lower corporate tax rates in Korea is on the rise. The call has come from local economic institutions. But the country's main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party, says lowering corporate tax rates has only weakened the tax revenue base, forcing the government to issue extra bonds. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues will travel to Seoul this week for meetings with senior South Korean officials. The U.S. State Department said Monday Robert King will be in Seoul for a week starting Wednesday. He's going to be discussing a range of human rights and humanitarian issues while he is here. The visit comes on the heels of a new UN General Assembly draft resolution sponsored by 45 countries calling for North Korea's leadership to be referred to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. Now, eyebrows were raised this week when the name of one of Kim Jong-un's closest aides was missing from a roster for a state funeral. Choi Ryong-hae hasn't been seen in North Korea's state media for a couple of weeks, but he did pop up in some news footage on Monday. However, that alone won't be enough to quash speculation he might have been purged. Connie Kim reports.
This is video footage that was released by North Korea's state-run Korean Central Television on Monday. Secretary of the North's ruling Workers' Party, Choi Ryong-hae, is seen standing next to Kim Jong-un and assisting him at a site inspection. Choi is one of Kim's aides and often serves as his envoy on trips to Russia and China. But with Choi's name glaringly absent from a roster of North Korean officials tasked with organizing a state funeral this week, there has been speculation about his whereabouts and position within the regime's power structure.
We've yet to see an omission like this. We are open to all possibilities and we are attempting to get more information.
Choi's name was last mentioned in the North state-run Rodong-Sinmun newspaper on October 31st. With Choi visible in the videos, some North Korea watchers say his absence from the funeral roster could be due to health problems or another unavoidable reason. But it's important to note the regime does not erase footage of a purged official right away to hide any changes in the hierarchy and to confuse the outside world. This was the case when Defense Chief Hyun Young-chul was executed earlier this year. North Korea has not issued a statement either confirming or denying the speculation about Choi. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea is set to reclaim funds linked to former President John Doo-hwan that were seized by the United States last year. Korea's Ministry of Justice says it finalized the transfer of $1.1 million in Washington with the U.S. Department of Justice following a settlement reached in March. Now, last year, the U.S. seized assets held by the former president's son and his wife on two separate occasions. The assets have been purchased with funds linked to corruption charges brought against the former president. In 1996, John Doo-hwan was convicted on a number of bribery charges and was ordered to pay the Korean government almost $200 million. the bulk of which is still outstanding. Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, is forecast to miss European CO2 emission standards by 2021 and may face penalties. According to a report by the European Federation for Transport and Environment, Hyundai, Honda, BMW, GM, Fiat, Suzuki and Mazda will, quote, miss their target unless they accelerate progress to reduce emissions. Now, Hyundai and Honda are expected to achieve the target at the slowest rate in 2027. By 2021, automakers in Europe must cut their fleet average to 95 grams of CO2 per kilometre. For every gram per kilometre by which a manufacturer exceeds the target, it has to pay a €95 fine per vehicle sold. The Seoul City government has announced its special public transportation schedules for this year's university entrance exam, or Suneung as it's known here. City officials say extra subway trains and buses will be running from 6 to 10 a.m. on Thursday, which is the day of the exam. Nearly 1,000 taxis and government cars will be stationed by subway stations and bus stops near test sites to provide free rides for test takers who might be running late. The government is encouraging citizens, including those not taking the test, to take public transport on Thursday, as traffic will be restricted within 200 metres of test sites to ensure it's nice and quiet for the students. And to reduce traffic, work hours for public organisations and governmental associations will be pushed back 1 hour from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. In Seoul alone, 140,000 students are expected to take the annual exam at 214 test sites. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day, and thank you as always for watching. We do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.